Hello all, welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's February 2nd, 2022. My name is Eric Osterman and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, and that means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your team while showing them the ropes. So if that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format's very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/officehours. We host these calls every week. Our call today is recorded and we'll automatically post a recording of this session to our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy our content and want to support it, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. Just head over to youtube.com/cloudposse. Again, that's youtube.com/cloudposse. And feel free to share these videos with your team. That way we can keep everyone on the same page and grow together. I always like to say rising tide floats all boats. So with that, we'll jump into announcement. Oh, shoot. GitHub's down again. Yeah, most of my announcements are going to be related to things I found on GitHub. So hopefully it's going to be stable for the presentation here. And we'll cover those, get into those. The first thing I wanted to do was a big shout out to Spacelift. For those of you regular on the show and following what we do a lot with Spacelift as a partner. The company is Spacelift.io, and they are an alternative to Terraform Cloud. They're in the same category as like N0 and Scalar, which is another great Taco alternative that we have out there for Terraform Cloud automation. Spacelift has gone ahead and helped upgrade our team in SweetOps. So what does that mean? Tons of goodness. So here is SweetOps. And if you haven't yet joined, you should definitely join our Slack community. And what we have going on here is a very vibrant community with like almost 5,000 people in just our Terraform channel, very active. But what our problem was that our history was limited to 10,000 messages, and we do that in a month. So now when we have this unlocked, you have access to the full history of all the hundreds of thousands of messages that have been sent. You can search, find your problems. Other interesting things are also available now. You see Slack Connect here. So now we can now connect channels with third-party Slack teams. So this is really powerful as a way to kind of expand our community and the reach that we have. So we're doing that to start with one of our partners with Spacelift. So if you join our Spacelift channel, you can directly reach persons at Spacelift who will be glad to answer any of your questions. You'll also see things like this now in our Slack channels where we can directly link to topically relevant information for that channel. So if you go into like our Terraform channel, here's the documentation to Cloud Posse's Terraform best practices, our Terraform modules, Atmos, the CLI that we use when working with Terraform. And well, you can learn a little bit more about Cloud Posse by going to the accelerator link right there. What else do I want to point out here?
Huddles, I guess.
Huddles, yeah. So this is something I really want to play around with. So with a paid team, we now get the ability to start a huddle. So these are just live sessions, informal. If you're bored at work, just join a huddle and we can all get together, talk shop, or don't say anything else. So I think we're going to play around with this feature in some of our channels and see who's interested in joining those huddles. Basically a less formal, less structured form of office hours, right? So I know a lot of people operate in silos with only, maybe you don't even have any team members in your DevOps or platform team. This is a way to feel like you have a broader community, more water cooler conversation with awesome like-minded individuals. So those are just some things that come to mind that I want to highlight as a result of this upgrade and good things that you'll see coming from us as a result of it. Any questions on that? All right, let's move on to the next little announcement that came across, brought up in my team. I haven't read too closely, but I thought it's kind of comical if this is the case now that, just using Google fonts now on your site exposes you to GDPR liability. And I hope enough of these absurd things come up that, laws and things are amended to make it more reasonable. So we don't have to continue having all these cookie firewalls everywhere and fear of using fonts on our websites. And I guess whatever tracking could be associated with those fonts. I don't know. Something's got to give because it's getting a little crazy. This came across my feed in SweetOps. I forget the channel, if it was Release Engineering or GitHub Actions. I thought it was really interesting. So when I saw it, I think somebody posted like, has anyone seen the CICD tool before? I'm like, oh, good, somebody shoot me. We don't need another CICD platform. I can't keep them all straight. The list is, you could write an encyclopedia on CICD platforms at this point. Well, it's not a CICD platform. And what I like about it is it's an opinionated but generalized implementation of a pattern that we see our customers doing more and more, and one that we would like to practice more of. So the problem when you're using GitHub Actions, Circle CI, or most of these systems is the local developer experience working with those platforms is subpar. Like if you're using GitHub Actions, there's ACT, for running GitHub Actions locally, for example. But ACT is just, a open source best attempt to reproduce the overall functionality of what you get with GitHub Actions. But it's not a reproduction of GitHub Actions. And there's a lot of things you can do in ACT that unfortunately won't work in GitHub Actions. And we've found out that the hard way. So if you're using this for local development to get your GitHub Actions going faster, you're actually just setting yourself up for a world of hurt when you have to redevelop it and redebug it anyway, so it works with GitHub Actions. So instead, the idea here with Earthly is, why don't you create or generalize all the steps that you want to perform in your CI, such that you can run them locally just as well as you can run them in CI, and then just generalize your pipeline so that they just called Earthly. So whether you want to use GitHub Actions or Circle CI or Jenkins, you can more or less accommodate the same workflow. So that's Earthly. I haven't checked it out personally myself. I think Sheldon, I don't know if Sheldon's on the call. He was also saying that he kicked the tires on this recently. Sheldon, are you around? No Sheldon here. So yeah, has anyone else kicked the tires on Earthly already?
I think this is the first time I'm hearing of it.
So what we've also seen, so like I said, I've seen some of our customers implementing similar patterns. What I mean by this is they'll write like a Python script that this is how, so you have basically a CLI for your company. And this is how we build our image. This is how we push our image. This is how we test our image. So you just reuse the CLI for everything, and you have the same interface for everything. And that way your build step is just our CLI build, our CLI test, our CLI push, kind of like make. And that's why they call this kind of like make on steroids.
Can you use like existing GitHub Action images? Because a lot of the compelling argument about GitHub Actions is the already built interactions and all of that.
That's a really good question. I don't know. I think there's a way to run just in general GitHub Actions locally, and that would therefore maybe be the way you plug into this. But what you bring up is a more important point. I don't know if Earthly does this, but it needs a pluggable system, right? So we create plugins for Earthly so that there's a whole ecosystem around it, and it's designed for local and remote usage, and then you just plug it into the CI system of your choice. Yeah. So I don't see use will across here. So I don't see anything about that. All right. So next announcement is GuardDuty. So GuardDuty for Amazon is one of the tools in your arsenal for achieving compliance in AWS. Basically, Amazon has a whole suite of products, including GuardDuty, Macie, Inspector, Security Hub, Audit Manager, conformance packs for AWS Config, AWS IAM Access Analyzer, and it goes on. So GuardDuty now supports EK clusters natively and will help advise of misconfigurations according to certain best practices that are there. So Cloud Posse supports GuardDuty as part of our engagement process. So I'm very excited that we can now offer this to our customers.
Have you tried it yet?
No, we haven't had a chance yet to try it out. Anyone? Ryan? Was that Ryan or?
Yeah, I asked it. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Ryan, good to see you.
Howdy.
I started to say something that this actually took me aback a little bit, because if you read the last paragraph, Amazon just basically automatically opted everyone in to a paid trial or to a trial of their paid service, which is actually the first time that I think they've ever done this before. So they turn this on if you have EKS in your account. They basically automatically turned on GuardDuty for you, and it says you get it for 30 days for free, and then you can turn it off or whatever. But I was kind of like, whoa, that's a weird
that's an aggressive
weird approach that they haven't done before, at least unless I misunderstand what it's doing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I saw that. I didn't connect the dots like you did, but it's almost like an ATM machine.
Yeah,
they control
the
and dispensing of dollars.
So if you're running GuardDuty, they turned on the EKS protection like automatically for you, and then I think you have to opt out of it within 30 days, or else you start getting billed for it.
Yeah.
Someone just mentioned in the chat that they sent out an email this morning that said that they're rolling that back. So based on customer feedback for current Amazon GuardDuty customers, AWS will no longer enable by default GuardDuty for EKS protection. So they heard it before. Yeah,
I guess I wasn't the only one that reacted that way. I was like, huh, this is weird.
Well, I mean,
still,
on a security standpoint, it makes sense to do it as security by default. But yeah, it's going to cost, so they don't want. That's where people are going to complain if they weren't expecting.
It still frustrates me that unlimited mode gets turned on automatically for T3 EC2 instances.
Yes, yeah. Which also costs you extra potentially if you trigger it.
Yeah, I bet there were a lot of account managers that got some nasty emails from customers this morning.
I didn't do anything.
Ask my TAC.
Yeah, I just read it and said, huh, this is weird. This is like they just subscribed me to something that I didn't ask for. It's like,
Awesome. All right, let's see here. Next announcement was this. It's come up before. People have asked, like, where's the dashboard for GitHub Actions? And well, here's spoiler alert, there is none, and there still isn't anyone. It's just that the alternatives for GitHub Action dashboards have been pretty darn sad. Let's see if I find it quickly. Badge board, I think this was maybe the one that I was thinking of. There's one that literally all it does is it generates a markdown file with all your badges for every repo. Hey, clever hack, great. Yeah, I like that you solved that on a dime, but that's not the dashboard I was kind of looking for. And there was another one, bringing back the Jenkins aesthetic to GitHub Actions, but I don't find it right now. Anyways, this one's actually looking pretty nice, this dashboard here. Your standard bootstrappy look, and you can point it at any number of repos within your organization, and it'll summarize the status of your builds there on that dashboard. So
there's another one that I've seen, and I'm frantically searching for it right now. It wasn't so bad. I think it was called Meerkat or something like that.
But it's a SaaS though.
Mirror code.
Yeah.
Mirror code.
Mirror code. Yeah.
Mirror
That's a
code,
SaaS
okay.
though. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Which, it's an interesting thing. It's like a dashboard, like the modern day reality, one that we actually, kind of support with our engagements, is like the idea of a single CI system to rule them all, or a single CD system to rule them all. Those are, I think, not things to aspire for anymore. Like like you might be using Argo CD because you have Kubernetes, but then you have serverless framework. You're not going to deploy your serverless framework stuff with Argo CD. You could, but it's just probably not the best tool for it. And the reality is organizations are grappling with multiple CI systems. And my understanding with Meerkat is that it's a way to kind of visualize your status across all the systems you now have amassed in your organization over time. So yeah, thanks for bringing that one up.
A really good idea is to send traces from GitHub Actions or whatever CI tool you're using. Some support it natively, some providers have hooks or binaries, and I just pasted in the Zoom chat the link to a recent GitHub project that actually exports open telemetry traces for GitHub Actions. I haven't tested it, but it's a thing, and it is a way better option. You can see trends, you can look into, you can do that in your own favorite open telemetry. Let me post the link in office hours Slack.
Pulling it up here. There we go.
For the record, like tracing the CICD builds has been a thing for about 2 to 3 years, and I think we talked about this. You can scroll down for a screenshot. And about 6 months to a year ago, Jenkins even added native open telemetry integration.
That's really cool. Yeah, I want to take a look at this closer.
And they're showing Honeycomb here, which, yes, definitely you should use it, but it is exporting in open telemetry, so you should be able to
supported by most
whatever provider.
Yeah. No, that's like, and implement that as a simple GitHub action. Love it. All right, this is something I want to check out some more. Star. All right. Next announcement. What do I got here? This
Actually,
is.
Sorry, Eric. Can I just say one thing about that? So I remember I was reading something after we chatted about this the other day that Spotify's like Backstage platform, the whole developer platform that I chatted with you about. I believe they actually have a plugin that will take a webhook from GitHub Actions, and it will visualize the actions for all of your services that you have defined in Backstage. So
yeah, I have some serious FOMO with this. I really want.
This is definitely like takes a bunch of effort to get it up and running, but for people who have it up and running, there's a nice alternative to get your CI stuff plugged in there.
Yeah.
Yep, there it is.
No screenshots, unfortunately.
Yeah, might be under examples or something. I don't know. I did see, no, that's just the YAML. I did see like somewhere a screenshot of this the other day, but I didn't save it, unfortunately.
So the commits, the workflow runs, but it would like an overview, just like, right, of every repo and the status and every branch.
Yeah, they kind of already have that view for your services. Like your service is tied to repo, and it shows the overall health of the service. So this plugs into that to show you that like if something's broken on your service, it will show you that like CICD is broken for it, or you have a broken build and all that. It ties in to the overall like platform. So yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to take us too far.
No, we should. I would love that. Anybody using Backstage on this group, I would love to talk with you about doing maybe a demo on office hours at some time. I'd like to see firsthand what it's like, and I think a lot of people would find that really interesting.
I bet if we reach out to the Spotify product manager that runs it, he would come do a demo. I've seen him do demos at other like
really?
user group meetings and stuff. Yeah, so they
Okay.
they do that. So I can take that on. I can take that as an
Okay.
action item and see if I can get in touch with them.
Yeah. Andy, Miguel, can you take a note of that one too? That'd be cool to do.
Yep.
Also, take a note of that open telemetry thing for GitHub Actions. I really want to explore that some more.
Okay.
Thanks. All right, so this here, so I first came across this as I was doing some other searching, and I thought, this is cool. And then I saw I was, I found this before during the GitHub outage, just searching Google. They have their actual AWS infrastructure repo here, the non-deprecated one here. I linked to the deprecated one by accident. So I thought this is really cool. I mean, imagine the US government having a GitHub repo with the infrastructure as code in Terraform for the PaaS that the US government made for government organizations to easily deploy the services so that these government websites could, well, not look as poor as they do. So I think this is pretty awesome that the UK government is this forward thinking. I don't know if this is fully live yet, but this is the direction they're heading, enabling basically divisions with the government to operate. Andy, this is I know you're in an adjacent field to this, so.
There are several different organizations that do almost exactly what you just said. The issue in the US government is that everybody's doing their little kingdom building and fiefdoms. And so nobody wants to use other people's stuff, you know, so it's getting better. There's a few different places. So DISA, which is the one of the main cybersecurity organizations, has a repository of pre-authorized, pre-accredited infrastructure as code. For whatever reason, they've decided not to give you access to the code unless you are a government person with a .mil email address. And I don't like that because I'm not one of those. But and then you've got the Air Force, who have a program called Platform One, who publish an open source Kubernetes compliant cyber stack called Big Bang that I work with a lot. That is meant to be that kind of thing that is like, hey, just take this and use it. It's like, it's already been vetted. It's already compliant. It's already accredited. Not quite there yet, but.
Is Big Bang open source
promising.
ultimately?
Yes, it is.
Or, okay, that's cool. Yeah, share a link to that.
I'll get you guys the link to it. And then I'd love to, so my company does a open source product called Zarf that is packaging sophisticated Kubernetes deployments, and Big Bang is a big part of that. Because you're going to look at the open source project and be like, God, this is complicated. Like this looks like it sucks to deploy. It does. And so we're working on making that better.
They're also hiring, by the way, defense unicorns. I saw this posted in the jobs channel. So
Michaela's official title is our unicorn collector, and he is hiring.
Awesome. It's a pretty rad name. I think the logo could use some work, to be honest, but I think the name is pretty awesome.
Oh, he's family now. We can't. He's Doug. He's family, so we can't change the logo. The logo is family now.
When did you start a new gig, Andy?
July.
Cool. That's awesome.
All right, let's see.
Big Bang.
So
I
it's
know from
interesting,
my
the
experience
WK
working in
link
the-
that you posted, that it seems like they're using Cloud Foundry under the hood.
Yeah, well, I saw. So I
which is
was
an older.
I was
path.
curious. I was curious if this CF refers to Cloud Foundry or their internal
Yeah.
tooling.
Yeah, CF Push. That's a Cloud Foundry semantic. That's a company I used to work with a couple of years back at Pivotal Software. I was part of the Cloud Foundry R&D group there. Neat product, but it's a little dated, honestly.
Yeah,
I'm curious to see what the Air Force project looks like. I know we were looking at Kubernetes as a to replace the container orchestration layer, and because like essentially what you have with any PaaS is you have a container orchestration layer, and then you have the API in front of it, and all the accounting and the routing and the extra layers that you need in order to have a full service self-service PaaS. So I'm curious to see how far the Air Force has gone in developing the product. You said it was open source, Andy? What the Air Force
Yep,
has?
I just the link is in the Zoom chat. Big Bang is a umbrella Helm chart for Kubernetes, and it's the whole cyber stack that you would run as your platform layer, and then run whatever apps. So it's got OPA Gatekeeper, it's got Istio, it's got network policies, it's got EFK, Prom Graph, Twistlock, which I guess is called Prisma Cloud or whatever now. So it's a whole compliance stack for the government has a system called the Risk Management Framework, RMF. The result of RMF is a letter called an ATO, Authority to Operate, and it's what you have to run in a government network. And this is supposed to make it push button to get one, but we're not quite there yet. We're
right.
trying.
The conceit is if you can certify the platform against your compliance requirements, right? That code's not changing, right? And then all you need to do is you take a subset of your compliance requirements that only apply to your application and just certify that, as opposed to certifying the whole stack, right? Your networking requirements, your RBAC requirements, might be given by the platform, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep. Hey, I know that guy.
I know. I was just because I know that guy. They've been infiltrated.
We actually just got our ATO, and we did it within 6 months on our own home.
Yeah, we're not going to be satisfied until we can get an ATO in 6 minutes.
That's going to be quick.
I
doubt that's going to happen, though. I mean, everything we had to jump through to be able to get it was ridiculous. So
yeah, it's happening on Platform One's Party Bus, which is their hosted SaaS version of Big Bang, because they have something called.
Is that for IL2, IL4, or 5?
Yes, to
all of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had fun getting stuff certified to operate when I worked at the G2, G6.
Yeah.
For the USARC.
Yep.
So actually, you're speaking my language. I did 18 years in the Army. So, and I was one of my last jobs was, I was actually in the G2 and no, G6. I was in G6, and then before that, I was in CI. So this is interesting stuff.
I'll get Eric to make us a channel. Let's call it Government Misery Loves Company.
That's about what it is. That's what it is, man. That's nuts.
That's a good idea, actually. Let's say we should create a Gov channel, Gov Cloud, or Gov something related channel, GovOps. So I'll make a note of that, Andy.
For what it's worth, on that UK.gov platform, the reason that they're on the way it is because just like any government, they move really slowly. The bake-off that they did and the decision they made to use Cloud Foundry for this thing was in 2015. And they've just continued along the path since then.
Yeah, that's typical government right there. That is
Kubernetes was definitely not ready in 2015.
They look at the new shiny toy 20 years ago and they approve it 15 years later, and then they run with it for the next 40 years. So yeah, move at the speed of government. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, so
don't short VMware stuff, I guess.
Jim.
No, I'm not a newbie. It drives me freaking insane.
I know. And then I worked for another company that it was, shiny toy, and everything. We spent all our time migrating just because a new shiny toy came out.
Yep.
That one's called conference-driven development.
Yeah, that was the same company that kept telling me that, hey, you're the subject matter expert for Amazon, but we're not going to send you to Las Vegas for reInvent. We're going to send the VP that wants to go have drinks and gamble.
Get into the events. Yeah. Well, let's shift topics so we can get to some questions as well here. I just got one last announcement I wanted to call out. It's nothing new, but I don't see enough people taking advantage of it. And since there's a lot of developers, a lot of engineers on the call, if you haven't yet curated your GitHub profile, I think it's a good thing to do. It's a great way to call out other projects you're involved with and things that interest you, like an About Me page, so to say. So if like if I went to github.com/cloudposse or /Osterman, here's my personal landing page if GitHub loads. And you can do whatever you want with this space. Why I like it is I think it's really important for everyone to curate your online profile, especially if you're looking for work or your next opportunity. Having an online persona makes you less mysterious, more interesting, frankly. So I love it. I love it when people have mature GitHub profiles, lots of pull requests to open source, and projects that interest them, pushed up there. So what's interesting about this link here is they show you all the badgery you can do, and other things to enrich your profile with different services out there. Cool. Well, let's jump into questions. See here. And Andrew Roth has that question. Oh, there were two. Did you get the two that were in a thread, Andy? I just want to make sure we also got those because they were first in office hours.
I did not see those.
Okay. Here it is. Starting these two here. I'm working on a command line tool. So Ray Myers, Ray, are you on the call today? Not sure if we got you, Ray. All right. Well, let's add this to the agenda, and we'll see if he's around next week. And because yeah, I think we need some more information. Refactoring Terraform. It's gotten a lot easier with the latest versions of Terraform and the ability to move state, but I'm not sure what kind of refactoring we're talking here and how practical it is given real world Terraform code. Bhavik asks, what are your thoughts on having Terraform code in the application repository for resources specific to the application and more static resources like databases and VPCs in their own repo? Yeah, so we totally support and condone that model in our pattern for infrastructure as code. What we use is in our YAML specification, we have this like infrastructure here. So we have our stack configurations that we define all of our infrastructure. And in these stack configurations, you specify a component, in this case, like Snowflake, and where to find that infrastructure code. So in this case, we say, hey, go when anytime the Terraform directory in the Snowflake repo of the main branch is updated, propose a plan and allow us to confirm those changes to that infrastructure repository. And the way we think about it is basically your foundational infrastructure belongs in a monorepo. And that monorepo is like your registry of everything you have deployed in all clouds, whether it be Google Cloud, AWS, Datadog, OpsGenie, and so forth. But then you might want to offload some of that business logic or some of that ownership to other teams. And that's what this is doing. We're saying we're offloading Snowflake ownership to another repository managed by a separate team, but it's still continuously delivered with our centralized platform, which is Spacelift in this case. Where it gets tricky is where you have shared services. And I would caution against like having an RDS database owned by the Snowflake service. If it's also used by other services, it doesn't seem like the appropriate organization. So if you have shared resources, those belong in your foundational infrastructure as a shared service. Any questions on that one?
I guess
All right.
it depends.
Mohammed, you said it depends?
Yeah, it depends on your
Yes.
use case. Some people split application from the infra, some integrated. I'm seeing a new concept where they create a template. It's like a template on GitHub. So the infra, the code base, and the CICD is in the same repo for one application. So if you need to create a new application, you're gonna template the Terraform side, the CICD side, and the code base side. So that's something also worth looking into, I guess.
Yeah, and well, and there's a time and place for this. So I think what we skipped over is like when I go to Cloud Posse big picture, I'm just going to wait for the image to load here. So this is, the 4 layers of infrastructure that I always talk about. And I think the monorepo approach is ideally suited for everything up through here. But once you start getting into your applications, what you're talking about, Mohammed, I think is a really great pattern where you have like a template repo. Literally, it could be a template repo in GitHub, or you could be using Cookie Cutter or something like that. And it sets up the framework that you want to operate on with your GitHub Actions, your Terraform code, and so forth. But I think that works because you've built the underlying foundation that all of this stuff plugs into then.
We've actually talked at some points about giving the developers the ability to run specific infrastructure modules. Say you want to spin up a new service. So if they can use, we had one developer who was really keen on Pulumi, and I was like, look, at some point, we can get to the point where I've got a generic service module that you can just call from Pulumi. So that was one approach that we, thought too. The CICD stuff, the setup in, your observability layer, all that stuff would be kind of cool if they could flip a switch with some config.
Maybe this is a little bit, off brand for Cloud Posse, but one thing that the way I do my deployments for SlideShare is I'll use Terraform for everything up to say like the security groups and the VPCs and subnets and all the things that a service will need. But then I'll actually use GitHub Actions to deploy the service. And so I'll have the service definition in my my repository for the application. That has hard coded the subnets and the security groups and the service definition. I just create or update my service definition from the GitHub action. And what that gives me is a fast feedback loop when the application needs to update. If I need to change, say like the desired count, I just do it straight from the application code. And I don't have to go through the Terraform feedback loop, which takes a long time. I could just get it deployed right away.
Exactly that. And that's those compromises you got to make at some point. It's like the Terraform feedback loop is pretty slow. So if Terraform is part of your continuous delivery of your application code, it's a bit heavy handed, like calling in the infantry every time you want to do a deployment when you just want to swap out, one of the soldiers. So, we support both models. I'm always conflicted. One of the beautiful things with Kubernetes, of course, is you just have this document that describes the architecture, everything you want, and then it figures out how to make it so. And the feedback loop is very quick versus when you try and do the same thing in Terraform, it's a 15-minute plan maybe to do the same thing with a complex ECS application and IAM roles and backing service and whatnot. So the trade, that's why in the end, tools like ECS deploy exist, because Terraform is just so slow.
But it doesn't work that well with Terraform because the way.
I know. It's 3 of one, 2 of the other. All right, next question that we got here. Let's see here. Integrations with GitHub Actions, Vault, and Terraform Cloud. Jeremy, do we have you on the call today?
Yeah, I'm here today.
Did we ever get to your question on this? Because I think you asked this a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I'd asked it a couple weeks ago, and then we didn't get to it last week either. And I was gone the week prior to that on a cruise.
No, that is unacceptable excuse.
Yeah, it sucks.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we answered it in great detail that week while you were gone.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so moving on, next question. All right, let's see here. I'm going to recap the question here just from what you wrote. Potential talking point that I'd love to get others' insight on if they've implemented something similar. Integrations with GitHub Actions, HashiCorp Vault, I assume, and Terraform Cloud. So GitHub Actions is acquiring the GitHub token via creds in the GitHub app, and then the HashiCorp Vault, GitHub OIDC is authenticated, and then Terraform Cloud workspaces, multiple repo one-to-one relationship.
Yeah, so essentially what I'm looking at is running GitHub Actions using the GitHub token and the JWT to authenticate to HashiCorp, be able to get any of the credentials out of the vault. But then figuring out how to handle the actual workspaces. Like currently I'm not using this method with some of my stuff where I have a repository that sets up my hosted zone. And I just have different workspaces with different variables inside Terraform Cloud. But trying to get that set up to work within just because doing this, I'm not using Terraform Cloud for anything but the state management.
Yeah, this is Zach. I work with Vault quite a bit, but with GitLab integration mostly, and it's still using a JWT token. And that token that's in the pipeline that you'd be using to authenticate, it's going to have some immutable bits of data in it. I don't know if it's going to have that workspace. You'd have to validate.
Yeah.
GitLab's going to give you to work with. But if you do have it, then you can use that as a targeting mechanism.
Actually,
yeah, because essentially on what I'm using that JWT token to authenticate to Vault, but I'm also using that as the identity provider to authenticate to AWS as well.
That's cool.
Yeah, architecturally, it sounds really interesting to me. We haven't tried that.
What I've done is had done ephemeral STS tokens that, for AWS that we then carve out in GitLab pipelines, using again Vault.
And that's essentially what happens then is by using that, it's using the JWT token to authenticate and get the permissions that are granted to it based off of like the Vault permissions policy, or in the AWS based on the identity profile, it's then able to authenticate and assume a role that gives it an STS token.
Yeah, it's pretty cool and it all fits together.
I guess.
Oh, good.
Go ahead, Mohammed.
Yeah, I guess GitLab, like last week, support OpenID Connect with AWS, same like GitHub, like couple of weeks. So I guess for Jeremy and Zach also, maybe you can skip the whole Vault part and just use OpenID Connect so you can assume roles from GitLab or GitHub using this one.
Well, yeah, in my case, what I'm getting the account ID information and the actual role name from the Vault.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's following a standard pattern that uses the account name and the role name, but then it's authenticating off the AWS after that using that information. So it gets that initial primer information and the application specific information out of Vault.
Yeah, like a
little
registry
variable. Yeah.
You could, in theory, couldn't you also use the OIDC provider for Vault to use the same, so you can basically authenticate with the same credentials to get things out of Vault, and then you don't have to have that JWT kicking around anywhere?
Well, yeah, the JWT is already kicking around because that's what the GitHub token is a JWT token.
Yeah, it's always going to be on every runner.
So you already have that token when GitHub Actions is running. That's why I'm authenticating it. That way I don't have to provide any static credentials.
I see what you're saying.
That's my goal. That's my goal, was trying to find a way to do it where I didn't have to define any credentials other than, okay, here's the Vault server address, go to it to get this information, and then everything else is from there.
Right now, the only way I know is that you're manually defining all those roles that you want them. You'll be defining it for every GitHub project, unless you get good with the dynamic policies. You're able to effectively pass that metadata in the authentication along to be able to do that, and it's kind of hard. So very use case, very targeted scenarios for that.
All right. Well, I think that was a really interesting question that you brought up. It's something I want to factor into our approach, I think, this year to leverage some of that. Let's see. I want to get to another question here that we had. Nija, you were on Office Hours a few weeks ago. I'm not sure if you're on the call today. If you ever got to the bottom of your CDN issues. Doesn't sound like it, or it doesn't sound like you're on the call. All right, moving on then. I think Andrew, we'll get to your question now. So Andrew Roth asks, given Cloud Posse's experience with being an open source first company, what advice do you have for new startups with open source products? That's a good question. I'm not sure where to begin on this one. What advice, in what area of advice? Marketing the product, supporting the community around it, messaging on it, you know, accepting pull requests. You know, I think that it's a very broad topic.
I think overall, yes to all. You know, I think there's. I was, you know, I figured, you know, we would probably not be able to, you know, spend 8 hours worth of content there. But,
yeah, no, it is a pretty big one. I guess, well, it's like, I'm happy to just talk off the cuff, but if there was a specific problem you were having
off the cuff,
I'd love to try
anything
and talk,
that has
talk
really stuck in your mind. That one thing we did was better. The best decision we made, you know, of all this other stuff that we ever did, you know, like, hey, you're gonna do any one thing, do this one thing, you know, is
So the Cloud Posse story, I mean, everyone's Genesis story is going to be a little bit different, but with Cloud Posse, what's interesting is, you know, I remember still the very first 2 or 3 modules we wrote, and I wrote them almost more as a experiment or proof of concept together for a customer. And I had all this doubt in my mind because I'd just been on a conversation with a friend who totally unsold me on Terraform and that it's just not ready to be used for infrastructure. And what I found was, oh, wow, this is actually kind of rad. And we're going back to like Terraform 0.7 or something, 0.8. And yeah, it really wasn't really ready back then for infrastructure. But, you know, luck favors the brave or the bold, whatever. So we went for it and did it and started putting up more and more modules there. I had no expectations that Terraform was going to explode the way it did. And I had no expectations that we were going to get any interest in our modules. Really, I just did it as a way to license and distribute our code in a practical manner with our customers. And then suddenly I start checking in and I'm starting to see all this traffic happening on a lot of our repos and suddenly getting mentions of null label. Like that's still probably one of our most popular modules. And all it does is create labels. And I'm flattered and honored that that is so popular. It's just amazing, you know, what is possible in open source. I think the key thing is that do open source because it's strategic for you as a company, and that there's almost no other way to deliver the kind of product that you're going to do other than doing it open source, and that you know, it's going to take time before you get an interest. Not all products have a large audience, and I think that could sometimes be the death of open source. That, you know, if a project doesn't get enough interest early on and you were just doing it for marketing purposes, it's going to be one of those abandoned projects on GitHub. But if it's something you're going to do regardless of whether it's on GitHub or not, then it's a great way just to showcase what you're working on, slowly build up a community around it. And, you know, maybe 2 years in, you'll suddenly get your first contribution. Oh my God, this is amazing. And that's what keeps you going.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that too, Eric. And a lot of the stuff that I try and do it on open source, put it on GitHub to potentially get the feedback. I've got a few of my Terraform code repos that have recently gotten someone else picking it up and submitting some bugs and working with me on some issues that came up with use cases that I hadn't considered. So I think the trick is, but if it's not IP that you're trying to protect, it makes a great chance to be able to get that feedback and from my standpoint, get those best practices and that second look from another set of eyes that's maybe not so close. The old adage, can't see the trees from the forest if you're standing right in front of it.
Yeah, no, that's true. And then when you get those contributions, that's what was really important to us, was like, I just tried to give everyone as much attention as possible. I remember, I think Mike Rowe, who's one of the guys, Mike Rowe is one of the regulars in our community and was the first person that ever reached out to me about GeoDesic back in 2017. And I never forget him for that. And he's still involved and working and treating like every contributor in the beginning that you have is, you know, is an MVP, because they are. That's what, if you are building an open source product that needs legs to stand on, that's who they are going to be. The other really interesting thing with open source is that, you know, you have these people that are super active in your projects for like a year or two because they're doing it at this one project at this company, and then they change company and then they just disappear because now they have totally different role and purposes and they're not active anymore. So that's been an interesting thing.
Yeah, when I was working for a company out in Silicon Valley, I joined the open source team for the Nagios frameworks, the plugins, and I rewrote the whole network stack for that because we had a need that it didn't have, and that was the closest solution. But then my next job didn't use it, so I haven't worked on that in a while.
Well, let's say Nagios has fallen by the wayside a little bit. What were you saying, Andrew?
What platform most impactful for Cloud Posse's business? The website, the Slack.
Yeah. Here's the thing, is that what gets you here doesn't get you there. This has been a common theme in everything that we do, I've done in my life, is that you start with one thing, you know where you want to get to, but you can't start with where you want to get to. You have to take all these incremental steps. So first opening everything up got us the visibility and got us the traffic, which was what made it possible for us to have a community, which is what made it possible for us to have office hours, which is what made it possible for us to have YouTube, which is what made it possible for us to get a lot of our inbound sales. So it's this, you know, one thing leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to the next. But if we had just gone straight into YouTube, maybe it would have worked, but I don't know if we would have had the authenticity or the platform to stand on or the people who cared. And so what I found in bootstrapping Cloud Posse and how we do it is I haven't found many shortcuts. I've just had a few, you know, been working hard and seized the luck when we got it.
You are doing a good job, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you, Mohammed. I really appreciate it. Let's see what other. So yeah, I mean, and then there's the, you know, the other side of it is like, then, you know, so all you're praying for is more contributors or more contributions. And then you're in the situation where we're drowning in 700 open pull requests in our organization. And, you know, this is important. All of these were important enough that somebody contributed them. And it pains me. It literally scars me. It hurts that we can't accept or look at each one of these because they don't fit a use case we directly have. We might not have the time to test and validate it. It breaks compatibility. And then you have this other problem that you got to start rejecting a lot of contributors. And that goes against the first thing I said. Treat your MVPs as, you know, saints, and, you know, accept everything they do and work with them on it, to this like, well, there are saints, but now we have you know, too many of these pull requests coming through. So new problems at different levels. And then the hate, and then the unappreciative, hateful comments and people, you know, I can't believe that something, you know, like this doesn't work and doesn't have this feature, and this is so, you know, critical.
I expect you to help me for nothing in return whatsoever.
Yes. Yes.
I
and
once
if you
had
do
someone
this,
offer me $50 to update an old script that I wrote years ago. I'm like, do you think I'm hard up or something? You know, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll do it for free, maybe. I don't know.
So yeah, that's interesting. All right. Well, we are basically out of time for today. I'd like to thank everyone for the awesome conversation and participation that we got. If you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, please head over to youtube.com/cloudposse and you can subscribe and get all of our past episodes of Office Hours and catch up, or subscribe to podcasts, however you listen to podcasts, our podcast specifically. Connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Osterman. I always love to stay in touch with all of you. And if you are interested to seeing how Cloud Posse can accelerate the DevOps at your organization, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz and see if we are a fit for what you need. Look forward to talking with all of you next week, same place, same time. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Eric.